When I got to the World Bank for the first time, I forget who it was, but someone told me a wonderful story about Franklin Delano Roosevelt when he was President of the United States. He had met with a very famous, powerful labor leader who was also a member of the Communist Party of the United States, but widely respected because he was a tremendous advocate for better working conditions. And in the 1940s, of course, working conditions for the lowest wage workers were terrible. And so he went in to see Franklin Delano Roosevelt and told FDR that here are all the list of things that you need to do to protect workers, to ensure that there's occupational safety. So many of the innovations that we have now, the institutions that protect workers, were developed during those times. And so Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, listened carefully and said, those are all really, really good ideas. Now go out there and make me do it. So I then asked historians whether this was a true story or not a true story. And they said, well, that story goes around a lot. And there's no direct evidence that he actually said that, but it really sounds like him. And it may be an apocryphal story, but it's a great one. And I think what he said was, you can convince me, but it will be very difficult for me to just take unilateral action and do all the things that you want me to do. However, if you go out and create the kind of social pressure, create a social strategy that will put pressure on me and that it will feel to me and everyone around me that it's inevitable for me to do it, then you'll be successful.
As humans, we face serious threats from nuclear war, from disease, from our own pollution of our environment. Our extinction as a species is actually more probable right now than our long-term survival.
Most people on our planet are pretty apathetic. Most of our fellow humans are pretty convinced that we don't need to change. Most of the people on Earth prefer the status quo. Yet, for people like you and me, we know things have to change, and change pretty quickly if we humans are going to make it. And we know we can't do it alone.
We can't talk about creating change in our world without talking about the political forces required to enact change, and those forces that resist change. We live and do our work in a world of countries, of governments, and ideologies, and it takes incredible effort to overcome the status quo. We must learn how to build support for positive change and how to push our leaders and our fellow humans to act. We must manage changing the world by convincing the world to change. We have to play in the political arena. In this Becoming Better Ancestors series, we are learning from global health leaders and those who helped to eradicate smallpox, the only human disease ever wiped off the face of the planet. This is Lesson 8. Mobilize political will, because with it, anything is possible. Without it, nothing is. Let's go to the classroom. Dr. Bill Foege is a legend in public health. He has spent his life finding and fighting diseases around the world. He served as director of the Center for Disease Control under President Carter and Reagan. In 2012, President Barack Obama awarded Dr. Foege the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor for his work in global health, in particular for helping to eradicate smallpox. Dr. Susmita Parashar is a cardiologist at the Emory Heart and Vascular Center, an associate professor of medicine at Emory University School of Medicine. She is a passionate clinician researcher and educator and trains medical students, residents, and cardiology fellows. In addition to being an accomplished medical figure in her own right, Dr. Parashar's career was inspired by her father-in-law and mentor, Dr. Mahendra Datta, who was a field expert working for the Indian government during the height of the smallpox epidemic in India. He ultimately rose to become India's Deputy Director General of Public Health.
by the late 1960s, smallpox had been eliminated in much of the world. Although the surveillance and containment strategy had been shown to be effective in some countries, other countries lacked the political will to invest resources into this new strategy.
And political will was needed. And I found that political will was like a religious conversion. One day they didn't think it could be done, and suddenly they saw it could be done. And that was the secret to getting politicians involved, is to convince them this could be done, and it could be done on their watch, that they could be part of the solution.
Essentially, there were two approaches to vaccination. One was the usual mass vaccination approach and a new strategy based on surveillance and containment. The strategy of mass vaccination had been unsuccessful in India for the better part of 2 centuries. It was the status quo and not keeping up with the massive outbreaks. Dr. M.I.D. Sharma and Dr. Mahendra Datta were immediate converts to the new surveillance and containment strategy and were vital in convincing the Indian government to move away from mass vaccination alone and adopt a new strategy. In July of 1974, the surveillance and containment strategy was getting results in the state of Bihar.
Most people saw this new strategy and were willing to adopt it. One of the surprises to me was that one person had convinced the Minister of Health of India that this wasn't going to work as late as mid-1974. And so the Minister of Health of India traveled to Patna, Bihar, to have a press conference to say that India is going to go back to mass vaccination. Fortunately, he was met at the airport by Dr. M.I.D. Sharma and Dr. Mahendra Datta. They were totally surprised when he told them he was going to the press conference to announce India will now go back to mass vaccination. And your father-in-law did one of the most courageous things that I have ever seen. He said to the minister, if you're going to announce that at the press conference, you have to do one more thing before that. And the minister said, what is that? He said, you have to fire me.
Oh my goodness, I can totally imagine him saying that.
And the Minister of Health was aghast. He said, do you know who you're talking to? I'm the Minister of Health. And Mahendra said, I know, and it's that important, and that's why I'm saying this. So between the time that they went from the airport to the press conference, M.I.D. Sharma and Mahendra Datta were able to change the mind of the Minister of Health of India, show him what had happened in the last 2 months in Bihar, and convince him they needed his political power to continue. He went to the press conference, he thanked all the smallpox workers for what they had been doing, and he never said anything about going back to mass vaccination. That is courage.